can't. I couldn't bring myself to tick that box. Because I know what it
Yeah.
would mean for us, and whether or not that is, and I have to say this somewhere and somehow, that doesn't mean that I support Trump. When we say that we aren't voting for Kamala, that doesn't mean we're all going out and voting for Trump. I'm going
Right.
to vote third party, and period.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. After nearly 11 months of mass murder in Gaza, the US-backed Israeli genocide is becoming almost normal. It's become like background noise, especially for those who want to shut their eyes to it so they can celebrate the candidacy of Kamala Harris without inconvenient images of shredded children reminding them of the Democrats' complicity. This can't be bothered attitude was on full display at the Democratic Convention, where the party leadership wanted to bury the genocide so much they wouldn't even let a Palestinian speak to endorse Harris. So where do Palestinians and Arab Americans more generally go from here? Joining me to discuss this and more is fashion icon Ilana Hadid, who comes from one of the most outspoken Palestinian families in the celebrity world. But before we jump into it, this is just part of this episode. The full interview is available for Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthrough news. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate the show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Ilana, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. The last time I had you on feels like it was maybe like a year ago, but it was just a few months ago because every month just feels like a year of torture.
Yeah.
Since October. But we just witnessed this Democratic convention where Kamala Harris was crowned the official candidate for the Democratic Party. And so much happened, and we're going to get into some of that. But before we do, I just wanted to get your general, I guess, take on how you feel about Kamala Harris as the Democratic candidate.
God, there's so much I want to say. And I guess we have the time.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in her as a candidate. I'm disappointed in, staying with the Biden administration as an alternative to Biden. I think, obviously that was like their best possible scenario, but for so many people who are asking for change, it's not much of a change. And she is really towing the line. And she showed us that at the DNC with her really horrific speech that was just felt like a knife turning in uncommitted voters, in Palestinians, in people for a ceasefire, in anti-Zionist, in a huge contingency of the Democratic Party who are asking for better and saying, hey, like, let us support you. Let us support the Democratic Party. Like, we want an alternative and something better. Give us something better. And we got a whole bunch of the same. So yeah, it was really, really disappointing to be from start to finish, and also disgusting, to be totally honest. It was like a really weird dystopian party during a genocide that we're funding and supplying weapons for. So ugh.
Yeah. And also, of course, the other thing too is this attempt to kind of like differentiate her from the Biden administration, sort of, in the sense that, like, are we really going to pretend this isn't the sitting vice president of the administration overseeing this genocide? She hasn't expressed disagreement with the policy that her boss has overseen. She's also come out and said she won't support an arms embargo. And then the general behavior, like there was all this decadence and this almost like celebrity worship at the DNC that was very surface level, just like a big performance and very empty on actual policy, except that we're just going to get more of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I want to get your reaction to, and I'm sure you saw some of these sort of at this point, I think what will go down in history as pretty iconic clips from the DNC, it wasn't just Kamala Harris or like, people in power. It was also people who were attending the DNC as excited Democrats, and their reactions to some of the attendees trying to like bring attention to the genocide in Gaza. Here's one in particular that I'm certain you saw. This was DNC attendees reacting to activists basically saying out the names, calling out the names of Palestinians who've been killed during this genocide. So I'm just going to play this clip. It's quite short. I'm sure most of the people who are watching have probably seen it.
Say it again. Say it again. Mock them again. Mock the children again. Do it again. Do it again.
18 years old. 18 years old. Yusuf Hassan.
I mean, it's just, oh, look at that guy.
Such an asshole.
Yeah, I can't be bothered. I'm going to sit there and mock the names of dead Palestinians. And then, Alana, before I get your reaction to that, I also wanted to play this other clip that really disgusted me. Here is the reaction from some Democrats from North Carolina's delegation, I think. There was a protest outside this house they were like having a party at, and the reaction was the following. I'm going to go ahead and play it. Woman who's responding to people who are upset about a genocide, literally twerking in their faces. Yeah. Like, it's so horrifying. And like, what is wrong with you? Anyways, yeah. What's your take on that?
I mean, it actually, now that I've kind of moved past the initial anger, it makes me incredibly emotional. And like, watching it again, I was like, trying not to cry. We are outside of the DNC saying, pay attention to us because your money and your support are funding the death of these people. And the reaction is to mock, to literally, I mean, if this doesn't explain what our political system is, putting your fingers in your ear and being like, la, 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 that's literally what American politics is responding to the genocide in Palestine. That is how that couldn't like exemplify more what is going on with specifically this administration and the Democratic Party. Obviously, we are not expecting, I think a lot of people don't understand. They're like, well, why aren't you going at the Republicans and Trump? We're not expecting anything from them, and they're not in power right now. They aren't holding the, presidential and vice presidential seat. So we are going at the people who are funding the genocide right now. So, and also the party that's supposed to represent us. That's the thing. Like, that's why everyone is so upset. Most of the people who are outside of these conventions are like longtime Democrats. And so we're saying to our own party, represent us. And this is the response. The response isn't like, let us listen to you. It's, you're not sitting at the table, so you're getting eaten. That whole thing. So yeah, like, we're just flabbergasted, and I'm honestly sickened. It's gross. It's horrific. And imagine doing that to people during the Holocaust. Imagine doing that to people during, Vietnam, during all of these like things that were wrong now. Imagine walking past people trying to call attention to it and plugging your ears. So that's what they're doing. And, history is not going to be kind. You know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. Like, people are always like, oh, like, what would you have been doing during this horrible thing that happened 100 years ago? And people like to think they would be standing up against horrors. But honestly, like, you're getting an idea of it now. And, I always get this attitude from some people, and maybe you do too, since you're Palestinian, I'm Lebanese. this is very close to home, right? It's most close to home for you. And so, of course, you have a personal connection to it. But I would like to think that even if this was happening to a group of people in any other part of the world, I would be equally as horrified. So you don't need to be Arab, you don't need to be Palestinian to be horrified by genocide. Like that's I'm just like, what is wrong with you people? Like, do you not have a heart?
No, I mean, it's honestly it, and I think that people don't understand. Like, this is intentional. It's intentional that this genocide is happening during an election year. You might think that that's not, that's not real, but American and Israeli politics happen in tandem. The things that happen to Palestinians happen, we've noticed, like, during really major things, like there have been huge, horrible massacres that have happened during major U.S. things like the Oscars and, the Super Bowl. Thank you. I was like, what, that football thing? I can't even think.
True. Yeah. Every time there's some big event, the beginning of the Olympics, like,
yes,
where the world's attention is distracted, they kill a bunch of people.
Yeah. So I think people need to understand that, like, the reason why we are so loud is because we also understand that this election is distraction from a genocide purposefully. It's purposefully being done in a time where there's kind of who's going to win. We're not really sure. We need to be focused on American politics. We can't really think about the Middle East. All of this is intentional. For all the things that I find disgusting about Netanyahu that I do, he is a politician and he is one of the most intensely, smart politicians. I mean, I have to give it to him. He's, someone said he's the great Houdini of politics, and he is. He just, he understands what's going on, and geopolitics is his jam, and he gets how to do it, and he knows how to rile his base, and he understands U.S. politics because he's American, and and he gets all of this stuff. So we have to be aware of that, and as Americans, we need to understand that, like, these are our allies, and we should be involved in what's going on and what they're perpetrating with our money and our funding and our military assistance. And literally, I've heard now boots on the ground. I don't know.
I mean, it's so insane. It's so insane. I just want to show one more attitude of, like, a segment of the Democrats that really, I mean, this, like, I'm not surprised by the source of it because he's such a horrible person. It was this awful tweet by Malcolm Nance that you probably saw. And I love, her name's Blake, I think. Right?
Yeah, like Blakely, yeah.
She does fantastic videos. So she posted this tweet by Malcolm Nance. He says, for those who are just listening, official ruling. The Free Palestine movement in the USA is finished. They utterly failed to show up at the DNC. The biggest crowds were no more than 150 to 500 at peak, but it included multiple uninvolved protest groups. Pro-Palestinians were invisible in Chicago, except on X and TikTok videos. No one saw or heard them when entering the United Center. No one. They will make a last gasp to protest, but honestly, they're hated and they failed. They're done. Kamala Harris has defeated them. Like, this is insane. And look, I'm not suggesting this is how all Democrats feel or behave, but this certainly reflects a segment of the Democratic Party's, like, influencers, if you will. Well, and it's just sick. I'm just curious what you have to think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Malcolm Nance has made his whole career off anti-terrorism, and I'm doing air quotes, and military. So obviously, like, all he cares about is the war machine. He loves perpetrating this idea of Islamic jihadists. This is like what he's literally made his entire life off of. So if we saw Palestinians as resistance fighters, he wouldn't have a job. So that's the truth. I mean, that's the reality of who Malcolm Nance is. He is, as Blakely said, like a racist. He's Islamophobic. as fuck. And he's horrible. And one of the sick parts about him is he's learned Arabic in order to like,
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's one of his,
that.
yeah. So this is like so ridiculous. Chicago has one of the largest Palestinian populations outside of Palestine. So to try to act like there was no representation of Palestinians, pro-Palestinians, as they call them, Palestinians, solidarity with Palestinians, anti-Zionists, that's ridiculous. Yeah, we saw it all over the internet because it was there. If it wasn't, then all these people wouldn't have to be plugging their ears. So the reality is we're seeing videos of people plugging their ears because they were loud and they were around. This guy just wants to pretend. And that's the sad part about Twitter and or X or whatever you want to call it. All of these places is that they're telling their own narrative that other people aren't paying attention to because the mainstream media isn't doing its job. It's not actually showing what's going on. And so people are looking to social media to try to find out what happened. And if they follow Malcolm Nance, they think that, not a single Palestinian was there and that Kamala Harris beat the Palestinians, which like, what you're talking about? You're like, why is that a good thing?
He said it was like the most boomer thing ever. He was like, the pro-Palestinians. I'm like, that's like, what? But moreover, I think you make a really good point here about the fact that Chicago has like this massive Arab, I think you said the biggest community of like Arab Americans in the country. Yeah. And on top of that, okay, so I want to talk a bit about what actually went down with this whole not letting a Palestinian speak. I mean, I'm of a couple minds here. Yeah. I think it was a good thing that we saw this play out because it showed how much the Democratic Party really just doesn't give a shit about Palestinians, to the point where they would not even let a person, I think she was like a councilwoman state representative from Georgia, Palestinian American woman who was, and her speech, she actually like ended up releasing what her speech was going to be. She was going to endorse Kamala Harris. She wasn't going to get up there and be like, we're not voting for this woman. She was going to call for a ceasefire, which isn't anything radical. It's even Kamala Harris is even saying she's working towards a ceasefire. And then she was going to endorse Kamala Harris. And they wouldn't even let a Palestinian get up and do that. I found it like slightly embarrassing. I was like, why are you guys trying so hard to speak and endorse this woman? But I'm glad it happened because it showed that how much they don't care. So there's these two things happening. There's obviously the whole uncommitted movement was people who were like, no, we're still going to get behind the Democrats, but we're going to try to push them. And I think they proved that the Democrats at this point cannot be pushed. And then there's the abandoned Harris crowd, which is like, no, we are done. They were abandoned Biden before. They hold Harris in the same light and they're refusing. So this is what I wanted to know where you stand on this and what your thoughts are on what went down at the DNC with not letting a Palestinian speak and why abandon Harris over the uncommitted crowd.
I mean, 100% I support the uncommitted crowd. I think that what they're doing is really valiant and beautiful. And it speaks to the idea of American democracy. Like we are supposed to be able to tell our representatives how to represent us and to use our votes to push our representatives, president, or, anything down from there. We're supposed to be able to tell those people, our politicians, what we want and have them do that. That's the whole point of voting, where our vote is supposed to be powerful. And what they're doing is telling us, man, we don't give a flying F about your vote. We are just going to continue down this path because what we care about more is the money that's going to fund our presidency or our party, which is AIPAC money. And let's just be real. Like they're not going to be willing to give up the millions and millions of dollars from AIPAC over, what they consider a small contingency of people, a voting bloc. And to be totally honest, I think a lot of people have been making this point, and I think it's really phenomenal that they're finally making this point. Arabs in the census are seen as white. Okay. Right. So when you look at how many people this could possibly be a part of. It could really make or break in swing states. It could really make or break whether or not anyone wins. I think they're only looking at the people who actually voted uncommitted, but that doesn't represent every person that would possibly, vote third party or not vote. So I think that they should be a little bit more scared of this possibility. I personally could never vote for Kamala Harris. I can't vote for a person who stands on stage, who acts like they're trying to get a ceasefire, and then also says that we're going to have the most lethal army in the world, which, means that you're going to murder people. Like, what do you think lethal means?
Yeah.
And is saying that while platforming parents of hostages, which go ahead, you should. They, American hostage families, you're going to show them. Why aren't you? There were many Americans who have been affected, murdered, also journalists, all sorts of things that you could have done to represent Palestine or Arabs in general. Didn't even come close. So yeah, I can't. I couldn't bring myself to tick that box because I know what it would mean for us, and whether or not that is. And I have to say this somewhere and somehow. That doesn't mean that I support Trump. When we say that we aren't voting for Kamala, that doesn't mean we're all going out and voting for Trump.
Right.
I'm going to vote third party, and period. Like, I cannot vote for either of them. They're both AIPAC shells, and I'm not going to put my vote, which I think is powerful, towards a person who's going to continue to fund a genocide, or someone who very much has said, like, finish them and end it also. So yeah, that's my take on it. And, I as much as I support them, in what I think is like a very valiant effort to try to bring the Democratic Party towards us, I'm not on the same train, but we're going towards the same path, which is freedom. So I'm very much for them.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I certainly, and look, I know people get really mad at me about this, but I did vote for Joe Biden. And
so did I.
I was like, Trump's going to be a disaster. He's going to go to war with Iran. I mean, obviously, like, I hate the lesser evil stuff, but actually I was in a swing state then too. So like, I was like, also I wasn't lecturing other people. Like, I understood if people could. And that's the thing. That's what bothers me here. There's no way I can vote for Kamala Harris at all. Like, I cannot in good conscience go vote for somebody who is okay with, like, people in my region being murdered and slaughtered, and that actually is giving them the weapons to do it. Right. Yeah. I just can't do it. People can do whatever they want. I do think that the people overseeing a genocide need to be punished. And part of that punishment is you don't get my vote. You don't get the vote of my community.
Exactly.
That said, I'm not going to lecture other people about it. I know people, I know that, people are going to do what they're going to do, but also don't lecture me about it. Right. Like, I don't need to be accused. If you want to be mad at somebody, if that's going to lose them the election, then you need to be mad at the Democrats because they are losing themselves the election. Like, if they don't get my vote because they're entitled to it, you have to earn it. And a really good way to not earn my vote is to commit a genocide.
Yeah.
Like stop doing that and I'll consider you. But you're right. They've chosen their corporate donors. They've chosen AIPAC. They've chosen the military machine. I actually want to play the clip that you were speaking to here about what like Kamala Harris, just so people know what you're talking about. I'm sure a lot of people saw it, maybe some people didn't. Here's a clip, because this speaks also to the fact that the Democratic Party isn't just overseeing a genocide in Gaza, they are a warmongering party. So here's what Kamala had to say in her speech.
As Commander-in-Chief, I will ensure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world.
Vice President Harris has always championed America's support for NATO.
Oh, there we go.
She's worked with President Zelensky.
It's Leon Panetta, guys.
Against Russia,
I know.
Iran, North Korea, and especially China.
Gotta go after all of them.
Watch closely.
Our vision
Like-
is based on our values. The values that took us to the shores of Normandy and helped us win the Cold War.
She'll
Like
keep
what?
modernizing our military to support our troops.
She'll keep America's military the strongest in the world, the strongest ever known.
Never known.
We are the damn United States of America. We lead.
I mean, this to me is just incredible, dude. Like, I want healthcare.
Yeah.
Like, I want school. I want to not be in college debt. I don't want people to come out of college in debt. I want like people to have access to daycare. Like, I
First
don't
of all,
want.
though, we already have the most lethal army in the world. We spend more on military than the next 6 countries combined. We are the most lethal army in the world. That is like saying, you know, like we want more McDonald's than any other country in the. We have it. It's already happening. Like, get off. What are you talking about? Like, just, that's what was so shocking to me as people were like, yay. And it's like, you're not saying anything new. What would have been phenomenal is coming out and saying like, we want to have the most educated population in the world. We want the best economy. And like, we want to make sure every American has a job.
Yeah.
That would have been like,
Yeah.
I would have been like, yay! This lethal army thing, while like funding a genocide and being involved in proxy wars all over, like you are just saying to like immigrant Americans, to Americans that have come from other places, you're just saying like, everywhere you came from, we're going to continue blowing them up and making it so that you can't live there. Yay!
Like, wow. This is thrilling. All like while, you know, having Pink perform or something. I don't know if Pink performed. I'm sorry.
Honestly, yeah, sorry, Pink. I don't think she did perform.
Sorry, okay, like, I don't know why. You know what? It was the
Little
Dixie
John.
Chicks perform.
Was it
And
Dixie? Was it? I didn't
Dixie-
watch. I have to be totally honest. I didn't watch a single minute of it. I watched it back later because I also didn't watch the Olympics. Like I feel like this whole nationalism thing is just the next step towards fascism. Yeah. We are like way too gung-ho. We have made our politicians into celebrities. It's so weird and gross. Truly. It's like, you're not supposed to like find them to be like brat and demure and mindful and sexy. Like that's not what it is. They're supposed to be smarter than you. You're not supposed to want to have a beer with them. They're supposed to be these people who like cannot have a conversation with you because the things that they're doing are so much more above. And the fact that there was like dick jokes made by former presidents, there was like, they were talking about the couch thing, which I think is funny, but
JD fans thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like, you're playing into social media like frenzy, and it's so weird and cringe. And like, that is actually so indicative of how lame our political system is that they're like using hashtags to like try to like rally a base who honestly obviously doesn't understand anything about what's happening, because if they did, they would be like, this is weird.
Yeah.
Like, this is
really
weird.
Weird. It's so weird. Like, before we started recording, you were calling it like a Black Mirror episode. I thought that was. Yeah. Well, it's also like you mentioned demure and brat. It's like they're taking, you're right, all these popular culture sort of slogans and hashtags that are empty. Like, yeah, these things are funny on TikTok. They're little trends, whatever.
They don't mean anything.
No, they don't. They're not policies. They're not policies that are tangible to anybody. It's like a big distraction. It's like this big pop culture distraction so that you don't see the genocide. You don't see the lethal military. You don't see the homelessness. You don't see the debt. You don't see all the problems that this country has. Like so many internally, and just causing so much destruction around the world in such an insane capacity. It's actually, from a PR perspective, kind of brilliant. But also quite frightening, because it's frightening that my social media feed can be brat and demure and then like shredded children. Like, I don't know what to do with that. It makes my head want to explode.
Yeah.
And then there's like another sort of really infuriating, frustrating, incredibly disappointing aspect to a lot of this, and that is AOC.
Oh God!
Right? So I know you saw AOC. Like, I know you didn't watch the DNC, but I'm sure you saw the clips that came out of it.
Yeah, I did.
Clips of AOC on stage having her debut, giving a speech, and she like basically applauded Kamala Harris for working hard for a ceasefire. We know that was all BS, by the way. Where there was no actual negotiations going on. It was just the Americans buying time.
Exactly.
And also, I think very cynically, though I think this is true, I think they were trying to also make sure that there wasn't like a big breakout of regional war during the DNC.
Oh, totally. 100%. They're like, just wait until it's over.
And then, wait till our party's over.
Well, notice, the DNC ends and they have one of the largest invasions on the West Bank since 2002. So let's just put that out there.
So insane. But so, okay, I just want to play this clip because like AOC was confronted. This is I don't know this guy, Chi Aussie.
He's cool.
Okay, I hadn't seen him before, but thanks to him, he actually asked her about what he called the elephant in the room. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this clip.
Neither party's official platform, in my opinion, is good on Palestine. I don't think either party right now is doing justice to Palestinians. That doesn't mean that they're the same. I think that a Donald Trump presidency would be absolutely catastrophic. I mean, he's coming out here saying finish the job of a genocide.
There's a lot of people with our politics that are having a hard time getting there in terms of supporting Kamala Harris. How do you think we help them get there in November to beat Trump?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, first of all, it's important to emphasize how valid it is. We're looking at over 40,000 Palestinians that have died under Israeli bombardment, and the current U.S. administration has continued to provide weapons to Israel that have been dropping on innocent Gazans. To me, when I process this, I weigh through all of the people living under extreme levels of oppression, especially outside of places even like New York. I think about the women that are bleeding out in ER rooms because they live in red states. I think about trans kids that are living in places where their entire families are trying to figure out if they need to pack up their entire lives and move somewhere else. We have to hold all of those things at once. And so to me, the conclusion that I've come to is having more people suffer to put on top of the already horrific suffering that's going on in Gaza is not something that I think I'm comfortable with.
All right, so I'm just curious your reaction to that clip.
I haven't seen that entire clip, to be totally honest. So this is my first time seeing that whole clip. Holy shit, what the F was that? First of all, I think she was wearing an Artist for a Ceasefire pin, which was like so virtue signaling. Take that off, lady. And what land is she an artist? I'm just like, the way the spin doctoring that she did in that moment where he's asking about, how we could get people to understand or to get closer to voting for Kamala Harris, and the way she manipulated that conversation and started talking completely about America and not about Palestine at all. I mean, she spewed out a few facts and figures that, she had obviously memorized and has no emotional attachment to, but she started getting like into things that are important, but have nothing to do with the genocide in Palestine. Like, she's doing this identity politics thing that is just really frustrating for Palestinians. Like, we understand that all of those things are important to Americans, but we also need to understand that our tax dollars, which could be funding all of the things that you're saying in all of these other states, is going to a foreign country to commit a genocide. Like, that is what people want to hear you talk about, not about like, shut up. It's so frustrating. She has become such a failure to the people who had so much like idealized her as like someone who was coming out, who was like, going to be different and be new. And she's not. She's towing the line, but, wearing a Artist for a Ceasefire pin. Like, she's doing all of it. And it's so frustrating. It's really frustrating and annoying, and it's gross. And I'm so disappointed in AOC. Period.
Yeah, same here. And I think all of your points are totally valid. And that's actually how she started her thing. She was like, I think that's a really valid point. It's this America First mentality. It was a big word salad. She was obviously trying to deflect, but also she got into territory that somebody else
Wait. Sorry, I have to stop you because you just said it was an America First mentality, and I agree with you completely. But everyone needs to realize that America First is a deep right wing mentality, and it is coming out of staunch liberal Democratic politicians' mouths. So I think everyone needs to understand that they're two wings of the same bird, 100%. Sorry, it struck me that you said that.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But okay, so I just want to point out, I'm not going to show this person's name because I don't want to give them attention. It's a random person on Twitter, but I want to show their response to me criticizing AOC's clip there, right? This person, who I guess is a supporter of the Democratic Party, responds to me with the following. I'm going to read it for those who are listening. It says, yes, there are clear differences between 2% of the population dying, speaking of Palestinians, 10% of the population dying, 50%, and 100%. If someone cares about affecting outcomes rather than using death only as a political talking point, they would recognize the significance of those differences. So this person's basically saying to me that I need to be okay with AOC saying what she said, because there are differences between the Republicans, I guess, would kill 10% of Palestinians, while Democrats will kill 5%. Is this where we're at? Where we're now having a debate over whether we want to vote for someone who will kill 5% of a population versus 10%. And also, actually, I have no proof that that's the case, by the way.
Yeah,
I've only so far seen them with a Democrat. Not that I'm suggesting Republicans would be different. However, I don't want to live in a world where those are my options. Either we're okay with
0%. Yeah, 0%. That's what we want. We want 0%. When you were growing up, when anyone who was growing up in America, let's just stick to Americans, when you were learning about things, did you ever believe that America would be funding and militarizing a genocide? When? What year or grade did it become, did you understand that? Because I always thought, I was basically taught that we were the good guys. We were the white knights that came in. As I got older, obviously, I realized that we manufactured a lot of the things that we white knighted. A lot of the stuff that we were coming in to save people from either wasn't anything they needed to be saved from, or or was something that we were involved in being, and I think that people still are not grasping this concept. 0% is what we are looking for. We are not looking for voting towards someone who's going to do 2% because the other people are going to do 10. We are not doing this. You only get lesser of two evils once. And we already did it in the last election. We're not doing it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
had I known that. Yeah. I just to me, I'm just imagine that question, because Palestinians have been so dehumanized. It's okay to say that about them. Could you imagine being well, what do you want? 5% of the Jews to be exterminated?
Yes,
or 10?
I know. That's crazy.
What? And you're asking me to choose. At this point, it feels like asking me, or demanding, not even asking, demanding I choose between different flavors of Hitler.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Because to me, at this point, these people are not different. Democrats, the Democratic leadership, I should say, is perfectly fine with extermination. And so are Republicans. That to me is that's the catastrophe. AOC is going to sit there and be it will be catastrophic. What is more catastrophic than what has happened in Gaza?
Yeah.
It's apocalyptic. What is more catastrophic than that? And then don't sit there and be oh, well, it will spread. Okay, so we're okay with it happening in Gaza, just not other places?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but like, tell that to my friends on the ground who've lost hundreds of family members, and let them know that if we vote in this election, only 2% more of their family will die, not 5% more. Like, fuck you.
Yeah,
That's
literally.
so disgusting and ridiculous. These people are starving. They're being bombed. They're being shot at. They're dying from polio. Polio is an epidemic that is happening in Gaza. Like, we are literally living in the past, and no one can understand the historical relevance of this. Like, you are going to be looked at as the generation who voted for people who allowed a genocide to continue to happen. We are going to be looked at. That's the generation. Forget millennials or whatever, Gen X or Z or B or whatever the hell it is. We're going to be the generation that allowed this to continue to go on. That is what we are fighting for. What Palestinians and people in solidarity against a genocide are saying to you. Don't let this happen, because this is the history that our kids are going to be learning about us. Like, be better, do better.
We're trying. We are, and not to say people aren't trying, but yeah, this is just utterly shocking. And you mentioned something I'd love for you to